Hello everyone, my name is Gil, or actually it's Gilberto, but I go by Gil, and my topic today is going to be marijuana in the UFC, which is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And the main claim I want to say today is that prohibition of marijuana use by the UFC and the NSAC, which is the Nevada State Athletic Commission, is unnecessary. And another definition I'm going to give to you guys is USADA, which is USADA, and it's the United States Anti-Doping Agency. And I'm going to give you three main claims why I believe that the prohibition of marijuana is unnecessary. And the first one I'm going to give is that marijuana use for medical purposes is essential for the success of the UFC. The second is marijuana shouldn't be in the same category of performance-enhancing drugs, such as HGH, which is human growth hormones, and steroids. The third is removing marijuana from the banned substance list would lead to removing marijuana from the banned substance list would lead to less unjust suspensions and fines. Now back to the point one, is most fighters use medical marijuana for recovering after their fights and their training, not during the actual fight. Such as Nate Diaz, who says it helps him with the healing process and inflammation. Another person, ex-fighter Matt Riddle, who got fired because of his run-ins with the suspensions and fines, said that that was the only thing that didn't make him sick compared to such drugs as like ibuprofen after he had surgeries, and it also relaxed him after his fights and while he could sleep as well. And the third fighter that also claimed that marijuana is the only thing that helps him was Cain Velasquez, who is a fighter who has had a lot of troubles with surgery and getting injured during fights, and he said that medical marijuana is the only thing that allowed him to train because other medicine is harmful to his body, such as painkillers, and they're also addictive. The second claim would be that marijuana shouldn't be in the same category of performance-enhancing drugs. And one claim is that a study by Ben Greenfield from the Onnit Academy, he said that the use of marijuana has been known to decrease reaction time and also disrupt hand-eye coordination and perception. So if you really think about that, and your job is to go out and fight someone, you would really want those skills present. So I doubt any fighter wants to use marijuana to enhance their performance in competition in a fight, because you need your hand-eye coordination and also perception. So the president of the UFC, Dana White, has also said that the UFC, that he believes marijuana isn't a performance-enhancing drug. But it isn't up to him as of right now to change that rule, because they hired a third-party drug testing system, which is USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency. And the third point I want to make is that removing marijuana from the banned substance list would lead to the less unjust suspensions and fines, and that's because Nick Diaz, brother of Nate Diaz, they're both advocates of marijuana use. He was originally fined $165,000 and was going to be suspended for 5 years because of that failed drug test. But that was also set down to 18 months and only $100,000 after the appeal, which is still a lot of money and a lot of time out of competition. And the second fighter, Diego Brandao, was suspended for 9 months by USADA because he failed a drug test due to testing positive for marijuana metabolites. And that third fighter that I mentioned before was Matt Riddle, who was fired because of his third failed drug test because of the medical marijuana. And also, he was fired on a 4-fight win streak, which Dana White had said that he would never fire someone that was on a win streak. And to conclude everything, I believe the UFC should remove marijuana from their performance-enhancing drug list, and if not that, at least lower it down to where it is not in the same category of performance-enhancing drugs as HGH and steroids. Thank you.
All right, Gil, you identify the topic pretty clearly. There's a reasonable propositional statement. I do think it's got kind of some multiple parts built into it that needed to be cleaned up. And then you kind of introduce a couple of terms there at the beginning. I think those things could be explained as you went along instead of putting them right there where the proposition is. There's a reasonable preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, although I do think some of them need to be stated more clearly as declarative sentences. The signposting in the body of the speech goes pretty quickly. I think each of the points needs a lot more development. Your first point is dependent upon 3 examples of people who claim that it has medical benefits, none of whom are medical authorities. They are people who are probably guilty of violating the rules. And so I think the first argument that the respondent might be making is, well, big surprise, somebody who's been found guilty of the rules says, well, the rules shouldn't apply. That seems like it's a little self-serving and potentially biased here. That's why I think that you need to have a little bit more information on the effectiveness of marijuana as a medicine, particularly in the cases of the types of injuries that UFC fighters are likely to have. It would be helpful to have some outside authorities. The examples that you have are a good starting point, but like I said, it does seem like they are likely to have some bias built into them. Your second point is on the brink of being a policy claim, but you pull back a little bit from that and basically say that it doesn't have these kinds of effects. And I thought that you explained it. It's basically a reversal argument that says that because marijuana has these negative effects, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that somebody would want to use as a performance-enhancing drug. I thought that you actually had the best argument on this particular point, both for that point and for the fact that the UFC authority also believes that it's not really a performance-enhancing drug. The explanation about why the USADA is the one that enforces this, do they define what the policies are and then enforce them on the UFC, or does the UFC hire them to enforce their policies? That was a little bit confusing, and as a consequence, I'm not exactly sure why this is an issue. If the UFC feels like it's not a problem, why can't they simply drop that as a designated substance for testing? I don't know if that's something that is non-compliant with some rule or procedure that has to exist, and so that I think needs to be explored a little bit more. And then the last point is on the brink of making some value arguments that the punishments are unjust. That's definitely a value claim. The idea that there's a harm that occurs to people's careers as a result, I think that's the way you want to be going with this. And the fact that people were taken out of competition for a period of time, that it hurts their ability to book matches or to train or any of those sorts of things. I think those are the things that you want to be focusing on. At the end of the speech, you finally come out and make an exit line that is a policy claim, so you might want to be careful about that, because I know that there's a policy claim behind your argument, but you do want to stick to the factual issues. All right, thank you.